We are all finished with our market square. We have the appliquing done. We have stitched the quadrants together, and I have blocked it face down on my wool pressing mat. And then I let it cool and dry overnight. And then I'm ready for quilting. And this is an exciting step. Many of you may wish to send it out to a quilter, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you wish to try it yourself, this is a perfect project to start a quilting project for yourself. So what I have done is I have the background fabric, and I like either the tan or the brown for this. We happen to have a piece of brown that was just a little bit too short to sell, so we used it as our backing, but it is 40 inches square, 42 inches square. So I placed it on my table and taped it down. I starched it nice and got it all flat, and I taped it with masking tape flat on the table. Then I put a layer of thermore batting on top of that, and then I put my blocked quilt top on top of that. And I love pinning, so I use lots of pins, and I'll show you the pin I like. It's like this. Let's see if so I pinned several times in each block, 2 or 3 times in each block. And let's see if we can get the pin to show here. So that's the little pin. It's got a little hook in it, and I really like that because you can pin through all the way to the bottom, and it keeps the layers together, so as you're quilting you can roll it up and nothing shifts. I then took it to my sewing machine, and with a walking foot and kind of tan taupey thread, this is Aurifil thread. I really enjoy using that. It's number 2326. It's a nice, I liked it. I chose it because when I put it out on the cream and the brown, it looked great on both. It kind of worked with both of them. So I actually stitched with my walking foot all the way around the edge, about 1/8 of an inch in. So that's all accomplished, and I used a little bit longer stitch length. This is about 3.4, and went around the edge. I don't like to use a 4 or so because then it gets to be so long. I really wanted it to stabilize the 2 layers together. So you can see it, the stitching on the back. I went around the entire quilt with that. So then I was ready to decide how I wanted to quilt it. And I have chosen to quilt outline stitch on my machine with the feed dogs lowered. Just go around the whole thing. And I love this hopping foot. It's a big, huge, round hopping foot. And what's nice about it for appliques or when you get to knots or anything like that, it floats right over the top. You can kind of see through it and go around the edge. But because it has such a big round disc on it, it doesn't tend to curl up my appliques. It doesn't catch on my stitches or anything like that. So this is a Bernina hopping foot. I do not remember what number it is. You can go to any of your Bernina dealers and tell you want the round disc one. This is probably about 1.25 inches across. Let me see if it has a number on it. It might have the number 44 on it. Or AA. Well, whatever. And I'm sure that the other brands of sewing machine have a nice large plastic hopping foot that you can do this. And it's really simple. It's not really hard. Just lower your feed dogs and just move around the edge. And I wasn't really concerned about being exact. I just kind of outlined around everything. That pretty much stabilized all my applique, and it pops right off the background. The next thing I wanted to do, and I thought it would be fun to do, would be the big stitch quilting in the ditch on all of my log cabins. So I will show you that now and give you a few hints on doing that. The first thing I like to use on my finger, I'll show you my finger here. it really tears up your finger. So I really like these Thimble-It dots. I also have, you can try different thimbles. I usually push with my third finger. This one I like, but I tend to sew on the side. So even though I do wear this, I use it here more than here. This is another favorite of mine, is this little black one that just stretches, and it's got a hard plastic inside. So that's fun too, and you can see I stitch right here because that's where it's dented in. But for big stitch quilting, I have discovered I really like these oval Thimble-It, and it's by Colonial. And I just kind of put it over the end of my finger to cover the spots where I stitch the most. And it's just a little plastic disc, and it's pretty sticky, so it's going to stay there while I do the stitching. So I have decided I wanted to use the JP8. I know it looks kind of green, but if I'm going to do all this stitching, I really wanted it to be something that didn't disappear too much. And I found that I like, even though it seemed green when I laid it on, it kind of changed to the color of everything, and it looked good with the creams and the browns. So this is size 12 JP8 Pearl Cotton by Valdani, and I really like the look of that, but you can use whatever you like. I put a small knot on the end of my thread, and I think you've all seen me do the knot. I'll do another one just to show you. So you just put it around your needle, pull it through, and you get a tiny little knot on the very end of your thread. So now I have 2 knots there. I don't wish to have 2. I'm going to cut one off, because we're going to hide that knot between the layers of our quilt. So now when I'm quilting this, because I don't want to tie a knot and stop and tie a knot and stop, I tend to look at it to see how I can do the most longest way without having to stop and knot my thread. So I'm going to start right here, and by doing that, I'm going to find my spot with my fingernail and tip it over. That's where I'm going to start. So I am going to hide my knot between the layers. So I pull it in. Katie, am I in the right spot?
You are, yep.
I'm going to pull in and just snag that in between the 2 layers. And then I'm going to come up in the ditch right there. Now, just a minute, I'm going to get positioned, and then Katie can make sure that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, are we ready? Am I in a good spot?
Can't see.
Okay.
There you go. Perfect.
Right here? Okay, so I'm just going to go up and down, and these are less than 1/4 inch. And some people can rock it if your fingers are strong. Mine are arthritic and not so great, but you can rock and get maybe 2 stitches built up. I tend to do just 1 swoop each time. But I'm going right along that edge. And I'm gonna, it's just going to get boring, but I'm going to keep going because I want to show you what I do when I get to the end to travel between the layers to go to the next spot. So I'll try to get down there. So you don't want to pull these stitches too tight or it'll gather up your work. So be careful with that you don't pull, you know, don't let them lay on top. You don't want to give them too snug. Now I've come up to a little bit of applique, and I don't want to go have that because I've already stitched around it. So I'm going between the layers. My needle is between the top layer and the back layer in the batting, and you can double check it on the back to see if your needle isn't showing, and it isn't. So I went between the layers underneath that applique. And then I just continue on to the next spot. And they're not quite a 1/4 inch long. You'll get kind of a rhythm. This is so simple and so relaxing. It's really fun to be able to quilt your own quilt. Especially when you've done so much hand applique on this quilt. It's fun to be able to finish it yourself too. So now I'm swooshing between the 2 layers, just running my needle through so it doesn't show on the back.
And your quilting stitches are going all the way through to the back.
They are going all the way through to the back. And the ones on the back aren't quite as big as the ones on the top, but my finger underneath. Every stitch I feel with my finger underneath. In fact, sometimes I put one of these on my underneath finger too. Let me keep going. Till I get to the end. And I'm going pretty close to the seam allowance. Right next to the fold of the fabric. And when I get to the bottom of this log, I'll show you how I get to the next one. So now with this, I can keep going and do this, just do the bottom of this one here too. I'm going to do that now when I think about it. Sometimes it takes a little planning to figure out where you're going next so you don't have to tie a knot, start and stop again. That's always my goal, because knot tying is not my favorite part of this project. So I've gotten to the edge and I want to go back up to the next and start and go along. I'll show you. I want to go from here to go along this long edge. So what I'm going to do on the back, I know I want to come right there. So I'm going to travel between the layers. Oops, I lost my thimble. Oh well. Must have lotion on my fingers. That's a good hint, is don't put lotion on your fingers before you put the sticker on. Doesn't stick. So I've traveled between the layers so it doesn't show on the top or the back, but I will show you the back in a little bit. So now I've come back up to this point here. Now I'm just going to keep going. Let me move stuff so Katie can get this on camera. All right, tell me when I'm ready to go.
You're good.
Okay, I'm going to go down along this edge. And once again, I'm being careful not to pull too tight. And I might reach a point. I'm going to keep going till I have to knot so you can see how I knot off. And I really like the way this thread, now it's turned into a little bit darker color. So my stitches are showing a bit, and I really like that part of it. If you wish to not have them show, you may want to choose like a 0196 for the brown, and then maybe a, oops,
an 0549 or P4 or P3.
P4, P3 would be a good tan if you wanted to switch and have 2 different colors at all times. But I kind of thought, if I'm going to do all this work, I want it to be a complementary color. I want it to look like it blends, but I also don't mind if it shows a little bit. So now I'm going to get that pin out of the way. And I want to go far enough so I can show you how to knot through on the back of your work. Now, when I started with the thread, you're probably wondering how long of a piece of thread can you use? Well, sometimes I'm tempted to use like 3 feet, a yard of thread. And while that is nice because you don't have to stop and start as many times, There's two reasons I try to resist the impulse to start with too long of a thread. One, it tends to knot up on you as you're going. Oh, lost my thread again. Goodness sakes. Not doing well here on the camera today. Oh, they're both stuck to my palm. If anything can go wrong on camera, it does. I guess you can see that this is real life. It could start and stop again, but okay, two reasons why not to use too long of a thread. One is it knots up on you. And number two is, can you see how thin and ratty this is getting towards the end? The longer your thread is, the more it wears towards the end. And I maybe started with a little bit too much thread, because if it's wearing out and looking thin and getting kind of frayed, that means you need to knot off and start with another one. And we can knot off and start with another one as soon as I get this needle threaded. Oh, needles. Let me talk about needles. So for needles for this project, I'm using the same as I did for applique. I'm using the embroidery, the Bowen embroidery. And this is a number 7 or 10.
I think they're 7s.
They're number 7. Isn't that odd that they have two different packages and they forgot to put the number on this package, I think. So they're wool applique. Oh my goodness, Katie. This is so strange.
They don't have a number on them, but they're just like the 7s.
Yep, number 7 wool applique. So I'm going to quit here and go back through and get this knotted on the back. So if I'm in the right spot, on the back, I just come back through and I make a knot very close, but not extremely close to my fabric. So there's my knot. Can you see it?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go right through between the layers and give it a little tug and let it hide in between those two layers and snip it off. So let me show you the back of the work. Let me tip this right here and show you. So here's my machine quilting, and here's my big stitch quilting. Is the camera picking it up? So as I would go, I would start a knot and keep going to this corner, and then when I get to this corner, I would go back through the layers and go this way and go up. And then I'd go through the layers and come up here and come back. And then through the layers and go this way. And so I just keep going around and around on my block until I get all of the big stitch quilting that I desire to do on that. So that's how easy it is. And when you're all finished, then you can put your binding on and you're done. You're finished. And be sure and sign and date it so that someday your grandchildren or best friend or whoever is the lucky recipient will be able to see just exactly who did it and when. Oh, here's the little fuzzy wuzzy that we've added. We'll show a close-up of that too. Isn't it cute? Right now in Minnesota in the fall, we have lots of fuzzy wuzzies crawling around. Next year's butterflies, I believe. So thank you for joining us on this get to know big stitch quilting, and we hope you will give it a try and enjoy this at Granny'sLegacyPatterns.com.